Hello, welcome back to the Geography 300 Geographical Data Analysis video series for WVU. The next topic going for this week is point pattern analysis. So what we've seen thus far, we've been looking at the arrangement of attributes. In some cases paying attention to space, like how we set up the predictions for our chi-squared. And in some cases not really paying attention to space, like the t-test or the ANOVA using non-spatial categories, like the mining categories, for example. And all of those were paying attention to the attributes and basically acting as if the spatial arrangement was just given. This takes a somewhat different approach, and we're looking at what the locations of the points are. And so we can think about any kind of point location that we can get, like where tornadoes touch down, or where you find the nests of different animal species, or in human geography, the locations of crimes, the locations of different businesses. In every case, we can be asking, is there a structure, is there a process leading to the location of those points? That is the purpose of this point pattern analysis. And we will see in the coming videos different approaches to understanding this question, to asking what is the pattern of our points. They have different approaches, different assumptions, basically different ways of answering that question. One of the main things that this all comes down to, that is common across all of these approaches, is we're considering three types of point patterns. These point patterns are clustered, random, or evenly distributed. Pretty straightforward. A clustered pattern, I've drawn it where most of the points here are clustered in one part of the box. That there's one area that has a higher density of points, that most of the points are close to each other. That would be a clustered pattern, pretty straightforward. For the time being, I'll skip random and show you the other non-random pattern, evenly distributed. Sometimes referred to as a dispersed point pattern. This would be something like a regular grid, where they're not all close together, but there is still an order, there is still kind of a rhyme or a reason to where the points are located. In this case, it's that grid pattern. They are all far from each other. They're spread out evenly across the whole area. In both of these cases, let's take the example of locations of trees. In both cases, you see this pattern, you can think, there's something else going on here. If you see trees that look like this, as a pattern, then, okay, if it's clustered, then perhaps there is something going on that causes the trees, that species, to be clustered. There could be several reasons for that. This relates back to that idea of equifinality. It comes up a lot in point pattern analysis, actually. Those trees could be clustered because they need a particular soil type to really thrive, and that is only in this corner of the study area. That's one reason. Another possibility is they are, like willows, need a lot of moisture. Maybe there's a stream that cuts across just this corner of the study area. It could also be, say, human intervention, where if it's, say, an invasive species and we're trying to control it, then cutting down most, if not all, of those trees in the other part of the study area, and just haven't gotten to that corner yet. It could be a part of the dynamics of how that species spreads. Maybe the seeds don't fall very far from the tree. A tree gets established here, its descendants, its seedlings, because the seeds don't travel far, are going to be clustered around that initial tree. So different ways that we can have clustering show up for trees. All of them indicate there is some process going on that leads to that pattern. Likewise here, for the grid pattern, it could be an orchard where human intervention has meant the trees are evenly spaced in that grid pattern. It could be where through some kind, like for a big shade tree, for example, if the seeds need sunlight to germinate, then there is a process there going on that means the new seedlings have to be far away. They cannot be near the initial tree. And that too could lead to something like a grid pattern, where they're evenly spread out, where they are dispersed across the landscape. For both clustered and even, we can say there is something going on, something that is causing that process, causing that pattern. That is not possible with random. A random pattern, there's no rhyme or reason. There are some places that might look like a cluster. Some places that look kind of empty. It is still just part of that random distribution. This is one of these situations where it's really important to have these statistical tests. Through millennia of evolution, humans have developed a really good ability to identify patterns, visual patterns. We can look at something and we'll see a pattern. Sometimes we'll even see a pattern that's not even there. Like when you look at something and you see a face in it, but it's not really a face. It just has like two knobs and a faucet arranged, kind of like eyes and a nose, and it looks like a face. You see a face, but it's not really a face. We're really good at recognizing patterns like that. And so you're looking at something like this, you might say, here's a cluster. That must mean it's a clustered pattern. Wrong. That can occur with a random pattern. That's why we use these statistical tests that are going to be coming up in later videos to really identify, is my pattern random or not? The best example is that I can think of for a random pattern would be a really horrible darts player. So okay, they stand back, they throw, and the dart could land literally anywhere. Sometimes it might land close to another one, sometimes it might be far away. There's areas that they may not hit at all. None of that means that this darts player had any skill. It would take a lot of skill for a darts player to get a clustered pattern, whether that cluster is on the bullseye or not. It would equally take a lot of skill to produce a series of darts that are evenly distributed, to make sure no dart is close to any other. A random pattern, anything can do that. So we will be looking at these three patterns coming up in later videos. The next one, we'll look into putting a bit more depth behind this idea of a random point pattern. And then we will move into two different categories of tests to study to study the point pattern analysis. Lastly, we'll look at some of the critiques of point pattern analysis, as well as how some of this gets presented in the lab reports and the write-ups and so on. So as always, if you have questions, please feel free to ask in the Zoom classes or by email. Thank you for watching. Have a good one.